senior Nigerian bishop is calling on the federal government of Nigeria to do more to catch the jihadi killers who burst into a church in Ondo State in June and murdered more than 40 worshippers celebrating Mass. Bishop Jude Arogundade says this and other attacks on Nigerian Christians is tantamount to genocide and must end. The bishop was talking exclusively to Arise News chief correspondent John Cookson in London. Here is the report.
It's a long way from southwestern Nigeria to the Houses of Parliament in London, but one priest made the journey to remind the world of increasing attacks on Christians in his country. Bishop Jude Arogundade from Ondo State said the attack by jihadis at St. Francis Church in Awa last June, which left more than 40 Christians dead, changed his life.
Going into that church and seeing so many bodies lying lifeless in the church was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen such a thing before.
The armed men entered St. Francis Church and fired at the congregation during a service to mark Pentecost. No one's ever been arrested, and Bishop Jude says the federal government isn't doing enough to catch the killers.
Well, it's getting close to that, and people have been using that word genocide, and I think that with what has happened in the northeast and some part of the north, and places like Zamfara state, places like even the president's own state, Katsina, and now Kaduna, and also Benue state, and many other places, and now Ondo State, for that matter, for crying out loud. You begin to wonder, what is this? We have never seen this kind of thing before. It's becoming an embarrassment, and I don't think that the federal government, who has the responsibility of securing lives and property of the citizens of Nigeria, are that embarrassed by what is going on, because if not, there's a way of declaring this as a national crisis and a more decisive action be taken to stop further attacks. But less than 1 week after St. Francis Church was attacked, many other places were attacked.
In one 18-month period from January 2021, 7,500 Nigerian Christians were murdered as attacks against Christians around the world increases year on year. Has that shaken the bishop's faith in God?
No, it only shakes my faith in man, that anyone, no matter what persuasion, no matter what inspired him to go to that extent of taking the life of so many people, it beats my imagination. I can't begin to put words in explaining what really happened on that day.
The St. Francis Church in Awa has resumed celebrating Mass for the faithful, but the bishop says it will take a generation before worshippers begin to come to terms with the horror of last June. John Cookson, Arise News.
Conversation there with Bishop Arogundade of the St. Francis Xavier Church, which was attacked on June 5. We recall that by August, the Chief of Defense Staff, Lucky Rabo, had reported that 4 suspects were arrested in a joint operation by the military and the Department of State Security. But people were skeptical because immediately there was that attack and 40 people died. Some people even put the estimate at close to 80. The state authorities were quick to say, oh, this was the handiwork of the Islamic State. And there were persons who said, no, this doesn't look like the work of the Islamic State. There must be something else to it. But by August, 4 persons were reportedly arrested. But as Bishop Arogundade pointed out, there have been other attacks since then. So he told John Cookson that the Nigerian government is not doing enough. What is clear is that the state of insecurity in Nigeria is a continuing concern for both local and international stakeholders. And Nigerians are just saying the primary responsibility of government under Section 14 of the Constitution is the security and the welfare of the people. If people get kidnapped, traveling between Abuja and Kaduna, and they get killed in places of worship, then of course it means that something is really very wrong in terms of security. And of course, Bishop Arogundade is right to ask government to do a lot more. And that is why the major conversation in Nigeria at the moment is about security. We can see that all the presidential candidates in their campaigns, I mean, they cannot fail to talk about security. They talk about recruiting more people. They talk about putting more boots on the ground, providing more equipment. I mean, at least we've heard that from all the major presidential candidates. And indeed, security even remains a major threat to the 2023 general elections, with the chairman of INEC, Professor Yakubu Mahmoud, disclosing that 242 polling units in Katsina State may not even be able to function strictly for security reasons. So whoever is going to become the next president of Nigeria has his work cut out for him. Apart from all the other existential issues at the heart of moving Nigeria forward to the future, we'll be making sure that this is a livable place, and government has a responsibility to protect everyone within this territory called Nigeria.
I mean, a lot has to be said. A very dastardly act when it happened there in our war. And the fact that a lot of lives were lost. But till today, like the bishop did say, has anybody been prosecuted for that? Yes, we've heard of arrests, but what has happened since then? And is it sort of like an ironclad guarantee that it will not happen again? Because after the incident, we all know numerous attacks that have still happened in the country. And since that time, I think it was even in Ondo State there, we still had another attack. How can we safely secure our country? I think at the last presidential town hall meeting we held in Abuja, one of the questions we asked is that with all of these attacks, what would you do as commander-in-chief if you've been briefed that there's been an attack? The fact that in Katsina State, for instance, most local governments are really under attacks. And people are saying, INEC is also saying that might jeopardize elections. So what would you do as commander-in-chief? And there needs to be full-on holistic approach to the issue of insecurity. And I'll just say it has to be multi-pronged. Number one, appreciation of the security challenge. You cannot remove security from the economic situation of a country. I keep stating the story of Peru and the Shining Path rebel. Once they were given property rights, insecurity stopped, and the war, the Shining Path rebels stopped fighting automatically because the economic oxygen was taken away. Then, you cannot also absorb it from the military formations or the security architecture. How are troops treated? Most of our Nigerian troops, how are they treated? We've had stories of welfare problems. Have all of them been solved? Then secondly, what's the approach? Are the generals battle tested? What is the war mechanism? And how they can also fight the media war to be able to include a lot of people in the process. What are they doing as regards that? What is the outlook? And when we say architecture, it matters a lot. What is the strategy like? Mostly, when you look at the American military, for instance, most of their bases are on the coastal line because there's an ideology in warfare that talks about, fighting from externals into the internal. How safe are borders secure? I mean, those are the questions. How well are we even using the instrument of state, diplomacy, and some other things like that? So it's a holistic conversation, and this Owo attacks and this bishop going there to the UK just brings to bear all of this. But I keep saying Nigeria is a great country, has the best possibility ever, has the best kept secret, and it will survive. But we need to get leadership right, and that's why 2023 elections matters a great deal.